Hello, everyone. Welcome in. We're going to give it a few minutes, or about a minute or so, to let people get logged on, and then we'll get started. Be right back. See folks settling in. We'll give it about 30 more seconds, and then we'll begin. Welcome in, everybody. We'll be started shortly. Stand by. Hello, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining the webinar. Today's presentation, Double Down on Biosecurity, Best Practices and Biosecurity Assessments, is part of the USDA's Defend the Flock campaign, promoting HPAI awareness, best practices, and biosecurity assessments to keep our nation's poultry safe. I'm Eric Gabriel, Public Affairs Specialist with the USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service. On today's webinar, we'll give an overview of HPAI, or highly pathogenic avian influenza, discuss biosecurity best practices and the role USDA plays to mitigate the risk of HPAI. We'll also go over available services, including biosecurity assessments and biosecurity incentives and cost-sharing benefits. And one last item before we begin, if you have any questions during today's webinar, please submit them to the email on the screen, eric.gabriel@usda.gov. We will gather and answer all questions after the webinar has concluded. That information will be posted along with a recording of this webinar on our Defend the Flock website. We'll have this info up at the end of today's presentation as well for you. Now, I'll take a moment to introduce today's presenters. First, we will hear from Dr. Nancy Hanaway. Dr. Hanaway is with USDA APHIS Veterinary Services Strategy and Policy, Aquaculture, Swine, Equine, and Poultry Health Center. Based in Fort Collins, Colorado, Dr. Hanaway currently serves at the Poultry Commodity Health Center as the Reimbursement Biosecurity Program Lead for HPAI Biosecurity Assessments. There she is. Hello, Doctor. Next presenter will be Mr. Jacob Smithson. Jacob is a Management and Program Analyst with the USDA APHIS Veterinary Services Aquaculture, Swine, Equine, and Poultry Health Team located in Montgomery, Alabama. He oversees the intake process for the Biosecurity Assessments Program as outlined under the USDA Secretary's five-pronged strategy to combat HPAI. Our final presenter today will be Mr. David Marks. David is with USDA APHIS Wildlife Services in his current position as the Assistant State Director for the Missouri and Iowa program. He leads a team that works directly with poultry producers, providing wildlife biosecurity assessments and mitigation. Thank you all for joining us today. We will begin with our first presenter, Dr. Nancy Hanaway. Dr. Hanaway, the floor is yours.
So welcome, and thank you all for attending our Double Down on Biosecurity webinar. I will be giving a short summary on what USDA is doing in regards to high-path avian influenza. So what does USDA do to protect animal health? Well, APHIS Veterinary Services protects and improves the health, quality, and marketability of our nation's animals, animal products, and veterinary biologics. Our experts work with partners across many disciplines, both domestically and globally, to protect American agriculture. The importance of our disease programs, if you're not aware, have a direct effect on animal welfare, the economic effects for our animal industries, public health, and the environment. Next, please. Regulatory animal health plays an important part in protecting the national flocks and herds. These disease monitoring streams are some of the ways we prepare against against identifying and monitoring disease agents in the United States and globally. And one such disease agent is high-path avian influenza. And as you see in the slide, we monitor diseases from around the world and in the United States. We do domestic surveillance, risk assessments and analysis, testing and diagnostic technology. We have a wonderful lab network across the United States. And of course, we are all prepared for response activities to these disease threats. Next, please. For most of you are probably aware, but the high-path outbreak in poultry between 2022 and 2025 marks the first instance of continuing detections in domestic poultry through summer seasons in the United States, a trend which emerged globally in recent years. This is considered to be one of the largest and most widespread outbreaks in global history, affecting millions of birds in numerous countries across North America, Europe, and Asia and beyond. Next, please. Avian influenza or bird flu is a contagious viral disease of domestic and wild birds. It's a major threat to the poultry industry, animal health trade, and economy worldwide. Caused by influenza type A viruses, the diseases vary in severity depending on the strain and species affected. High-path AI strains are deadly to domestic poultry and can wipe out entire flocks in just a matter of days. So what do you look for as a poultry producer? The signs are sometimes just sudden death without any prior symptoms of illness, lack of energy, appetite, a drop in egg production, swelling of the eyelids, comb, wattles, and shanks, purple discoloration, gasping for air, nasal discharge, coughing, sneezing, twisting of the head and neck, stumbling or falling down, and diarrhea. Next, please. So how is it spread? Well, 75% of high-path AI detections are consistent with wild bird introductions. 25% are consistent with farm-to-farm transmission. That's why APHIS has studied commercial table egg layers and commercial turkey disease events to get more information on how this is transmitted. What we do know, though, is maintaining farm biosecurity can reduce the spread of infection. Most impactful measures are keeping away rodents from feed sources, requiring farm personnel to change clothes and shoes, cleaning and disinfecting shared vehicles and equipment. Next, please. APHIS has one of the strongest avian influenza surveillance systems in the world. APHIS's wild bird surveillance program provides an early warning system for the introduction and distribution of avian influenza viruses of concern in the United States, allowing APHIS in the poultry industry to take timely and rapid action to reduce the risk of spread to our poultry industry and other populations of concern. There are many species that are potentially susceptible to high-path AI. In addition to birds and poultry, H5N1 has been detected in some mammals, and which we monitor very closely. And this is a very current map. I think it's up to date as far as January 20th, but it just kind of gives you an idea of all the locations that we have detections in wild birds and in mammals to present. Next, please. So biosecurity is the key to mitigate the risk of disease spread. Smaller producers and operations, we have lots of resources on our Defend the Flock site. And we also have a biosecurity plan for poultry producers with 500 plus birds We offer 2 biosecurity assessments to identify simple, practical steps to strengthen biosecurity at your facility. And it's critical that people take this seriously. We can slow down or stop the spread, but it takes all of us to do it. Next, please. So what's USDA's strategy to curb high-path AI? Invest in the gold standard, biosecurity. We want to increase relief to aid the farmers. And again, this is through our biosecurity incentive program. Remove unnecessary regulatory burdens on the chicken and egg industry. And explore innovative strategies for protecting poultry. And also to consider temporary import-export options and evaluate the best international practices. So I thank you all for your time. And now I will give you to Jacob.
Thank you, Nancy. I'm now going to provide you all with an overview of the Poultry Biosecurity Incentive Program and what type of assessments are available to you all. Next slide, please. The Biosecurity Assessment Program is designed to address biosecurity gaps on commercial farms and enhance biosecurity measures on commercial farms as well. The program is a cost share between the producer and the USDA, which is up to 75% USDA and at least 25% the producer. A producer can receive reimbursement after remediations that are identified in an audit or an assessment has been completed to receive a pass. The amount a producer can receive in reimbursement depends on the farm's inventory size for the previous year up to December 31st. Next slide, please. So what type of assessment qualifies a premises for the biosecurity incentive? First, you have the BCAP, the Biosecurity Compliance Audit Program. It is required to provide indemnity eligibility for commercial premises intending to move poultry into a buffer zone of a control area, and for previously infected premises to provide indemnity eligibility prior to restocking. This type of audit requires a final review by a trained BCAP certified veterinary medical officer before the producer receives their pass. Next, you have the BIFA, the Biosecurity Incentive Focused Assessment. This assessment is voluntary, but is conducted using the BCAP Biosecurity Audit tool for premises outside of a control area. A premises that volunteers for the BIFA, and if identified as a commercial premises under the NPIP threshold size, the premises will receive the assessment of the BCAP level, which is the Certified Veterinary Medical Officer Review, which when passed will be good for 6 months and will assist them in getting a permit or restocking quicker than if they did not have a BCAP completed. If the premises does not identify as a commercial, they will just receive the assessment without a BCAP veterinary medical officer review. This assessment is conducted virtually to limit the number of individuals on the premises. If the assessment has to be conducted on site due to connection issues, then we recommend that it be conducted when there are no birds on the premises. For the producer to receive reimbursement for a BCAP audit or a BIFA assessment, they must complete everything that is identified in the assessment to receive a pass before they can be reimbursed. Last, we have the WBA, the Wildlife Biosecurity Assessment. This assessment is also voluntary and is conducted to identify options for managing wildlife and facility repairs to shield your poultry from HPAI. This assessment is conducted on farm and is broken up into 3 tiers of priority. The 3 tiers identify high, medium, and low concerns that need remediations. For a producer to be eligible for reimbursement for the WBA, a producer must complete at least 1 item in Tier 1. Then all Tier 1 hazards must be successfully mitigated to be eligible for Tier 2 and Tier 3 hazards that are mitigated to receive reimbursement. Next slide, please. So how does a producer request an assessment? For the mandatory audits, such as the BCAP, the process to request that audit will follow the protocols already in place, which is requesting it through your area veterinarian in charge, also known as the APHIS for your state. If the producer has already completed a BCAP and is just wanting to receive reimbursement, they will contact the poultry.biosecurity@usda.gov email address. For the BIFA and the WBA assessments, the producer will request the assessments through the poultry.biosecurity email box or by calling 844-820-2234, which is the request hotline. We ask the producers to provide us with their 911 address where the animals are located, the premises ID number, if known, and the type of assessments they are requesting. We must have this information to create a participating premises agreement for your premises that you wish to receive an assessment for and for reimbursement. For all audits and assessments conducted, an agreement must be completed to submit for reimbursement once you have received a passing assessment. Next slide, please. What should a producer expect after they request an assessment now? The biosecurity assessment team will either set up a Microsoft Teams meeting with the producer to go over the participating premises agreement and answer any questions that the producer has before they sign and are contacted by an assessor. Or we will send them an email with instructions on how to complete the agreement and contact us by phone or email to answer any questions that you may have through the process of completing that agreement. Once the form is signed by the producer, the assessment team will review for accuracy and then submit to the area veterinarian in charge for your state and the state animal health official for their signature. The target time frame for an assessor to be assigned and begin an assessment is roughly around 2 to 4 weeks after all signatures have been obtained. As stated earlier, the BIFA is conducted virtually and the WBA assessment is completed in person in a multi-phase approach that spans several weeks to months. Normally, wildlife services will check in every 60, 90, and 120 days to see where the producers stand on completing remediations. Once all remediations are complete and the producer receives a pass, the producer can start submitting for reimbursement. Next slide, please. So what if an assessment doesn't identify any biosecurity issues? If no critical issues are identified after completing a biosecurity assessment, a producer can submit what is called the BSIP, the Biosecurity Supplemental Improvement Proposal. The BSIP is available for premises that have not reached their cap amount and have passed at least one of the assessments, the BCAP, the BIFA, or the WBA. Each premises can write a proposal for approval with estimated cost on an area where you see that would improve biosecurity for your premises that was not identified in one of our USDA assessments. The proposal will be reviewed, and if approved, the producer for that premises will be notified and the proposed project can begin, but not before approvals is given. Each premises has 30 days to submit a proposal once they receive their pass from one of the assessments. Next slide, please. A producer has 120 days from the time they successfully complete an assessment, audit, or implementing the BSIP biosecurity improvements to request reimbursement. Producers must submit all required documents as a single package to the aphis.vs.asc.biosecurity.payments@usda.gov email address. That single package must include an itemized list of costs, receipts, invoices, or validation of each cost, and proof of last year's inventory. Our finance team will review these 3 items along with the assessment to ensure both are in line with each other before payment is issued to the producer. Next slide, please. So a brief recap about the program. Each premises is eligible to be reimbursed once for each of the following assessments: the BCAP, the BFA, the WBA, and the BSIP. The combined reimbursement for each premises is not to exceed the maximum reimbursement amount for the size of the premises inventory. A single payment for reimbursement will be provided to the producer for each successfully completed assessment, audit, or proposal. If the producer reaches the overall reimbursement limit, cost exceeding the limit will not be reimbursed. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to go over the Poultry Biosecurity Incentive Program Participation Agreement and how it has to be completed in order to receive reimbursement for assessments requested. Back one slide, please. Thank you. The agreement contains premises information where the assessment or audit will be conducted and last year's inventory, including species and purpose. You will also select the type of assessment you wish to receive, and at any time you can request an additional assessment. There is a breakdown of each of the type of assessments we have covered already in today's webinar for you to reference when making your selection on the agreement. There is also information that is included on the reimbursement process and how to claim the reimbursement, which includes documents you will be required to submit once you have completed your assessments and receive a pass from the USDA. Finally, on this form, you will be provided with information on how some agricultural program payments are taxable income and could be included on a 1099 form, along with information about the Freedom of Information Act. This form is 5 pages in length, with only 3 pages requiring information to be filled out for us to process to sign you an assessor to get the assessments started for your premises. Next slide, please. So to conclude the information about the participation agreement, I wanted to provide you with the breakdown of the premises total reimbursement amount, along with the listed premises purposes that is captured on the agreement that you will make your selection on when entering your previous year's inventory. As you can see, the list amounts starts at $2,500 and goes up to $25,000 depending on your production's type and inventory amount. Please keep in mind that poultry premises that have 500 birds or greater qualify for reimbursement following the completion of an assessment, and this is a cost share program with the producers covering up to 25% of the cost and the USDA up to 75% of the cost, but no more than the amount the premises qualifies for with their previous year's inventory. Thank you for your time, and I will now turn it over to David.
All right, thank you. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to talk about the wildlife biosecurity assessments and the wildlife side of HPAI AI. So you can go to the next slide. And just to start off, I want to give some basic wildlife HPAI AI background info. So I'm going to start off by saying a statement that I heard one of our cooperators in Iowa say, and I think it sums it up really well. So I stole it from him. So, but basically, we are now living with a foreign animal disease that is endemic in North American wildlife. So just think about that statement for a second, that, you know, it's a foreign animal disease as far as North America knows, but it's circulating in North American wildlife. So that means as an industry, we do need to change how we operate because things are different now. So some basic facts, I think a lot of you know, but I just want to review. But basically, waterfowl are the reservoir for avian influenza viruses in general. And now, of course, we are seeing this HPAI AI virus circulating and maintaining in waterfowl. So ducks and geese, they are the ones that are circulating it. We see genetic recombinations within the populations. They move it long distances across North America during migration. And we also know that we see spikes in domestic poultry, the positives, and we see the same genetic genotypes as the waterfowl during migration. So it's definitely related. But we also know that these ducks and geese, don't really come into direct contact with commercial poultry. So how is it getting inside? And that's basically where we are focusing. And we do know now from testing, we're starting to test, or we have been testing, what we call peri-domestic species. So these are wildlife, but they're peri-domestic, which means they live in close proximity to humans. You could think of them as, the farm birds, the birds that you see on your farm, right? These are peri-domestic. We've been testing them, and we have found that these species can indeed get HPAI, and they can potentially be this link between waterfowl and domestic poultry, because we know that these peri-domestics, like you can see the starling in the picture there, we know that they can actually get in the barns, right? So knowing all that background info, we can basically come up with like different levels of risks, and they can be separated in general between direct contact and indirect contact. So things with direct contact would be a higher risk than indirect. An indirect hazard might be, for an example, like standing water. If you have water around your farm, it's going to attract the waterfowl because they like water, of course, but it also is a perfect media for the virus itself. So it can, the waterfowl will bring it in, and then the virus lives in the water, and then you have these peri-domestic species like a swallow or a sparrow, whatever. They go to the water and potentially get infected themselves, or even just acting as a fomite where they can get it on their feathers and bring it into the barn. So that's just one example of an indirect contact. And we're going to go through these more specifically, but the basic premise is that we are looking at these links between waterfowl and the domestic poultry. So go ahead, next slide. So Wildlife Services, what we can do is we provide assistance to producers by, first of all, kind of identifying what species are there, and therefore, different risks, because different species have different habitats and requirements, and also what hazards are present, and then recommending different mitigation strategies to the producers. And I do want to emphasize that all of our recommendations are truly recommendations. They're not required. We give you the information, and we leave it up to the producer to make those management decisions on what hazards to focus on, because we recognize that some might be very costly to fix, some might not even be even possible due to the way that your facility operates. But we give you the list, and it's up to we have a discussion basically on what we recommend, and it's up to the producers to fix what they can. We do help with those decisions, like I said, and we also can help by reducing the actual probability of introductions by decreasing the amount of wildlife on site, which what we call is direct control. And I'm going to go into more of these in detail, but what we have found over the last couple of years working on a pilot project with this is that all three components of these are necessary. You can't just do direct control and not fix any of the hazards, for instance. You basically have to do both to be the most successful. So next slide. So the first thing we do when we work with a producer and throughout, I will mention that this is kind of a long-term relationship. It's not just one visit and we're done. But one of the first things we do is we look at what wildlife is actually present. So basically, if you can imagine, a farm in Iowa might have different wildlife than a farm in Florida, right? We have different wild birds, we have different climate and therefore habitats and therefore different risks. So we need to know what species are there, both for a couple reasons, because of the different level of risk, but also because different species might have different legality and protection. So for example, pigeons, starlings, and sparrows, they're all invasive species. They're not protected by any federal laws. You can do different types of direct control compared to, American robins, swallows, things like that are protected by the Migratory Bird Treaty Act. So therefore, you need to have different permits and different techniques are allowed. So we take that all into consideration. But one of the things we do is we do these standard methods to document what is there. And I should mention that we developed an app that we use on our phone that's GIS capable. So whenever all the data that we take is entered into this app, and it takes a time and a little location. So over time, you can see trends, and we can make these maps like this, for example, where it shows, areas of the highest activity. So then we can show those to the producers, and they can get a visual representation of where the most activity is, and then maybe see, like, why is that spot darker than the rest? Is there, is that where the grain bins are? Is there something going on there? And work on fixing that. And then, as you can see from the bar graphs, over time, going hand in hand with direct control, which I'll talk about in a little bit, you should see, the trend of abundance going down over time, and this will leave the producer with a record of over time what happens. And then again, over multiple years, you can see how longer trends like seasonality can apply too. Like during migration, you might see spikes. Go ahead, next slide. The second component is the actual wildlife biosecurity assessment part of it, and this is where our employees will literally walk the entire perimeter buffer area within the area, and we're looking for all types of hazards, both the direct hazards like the holes in the wall versus the indirect attractants like spilled grain and water. We will literally walk every barn, we use binoculars as we're walking to see every hole. We look at all the different like exclusion and netting to look for holes, and then when we find anything, we have the app on our phone, so we mark a point, we fill in the data, what it is, and we actually take a picture of it. And then, when we're all done, we can pose a pretty quick and dirty report where it's a map like you can see there, but it also, each page will have like each barn maybe blown up, so you can see specifically where it is, and you can see an actual picture of what the hazard is. So again, let's say it's a gap in the netting. We'll take a picture of it, and we'll show the point on the map. So it's really meant to be a report that you can hand to your maintenance crew and say, here you go, fix all these holes and all these hazards. And again, we do rank them, the different tiers as far as hazard and risk. The direct holes and stuff would be a tier 1, the highest risk. Standing water and attractants might be 2, and then there's even tier 3, which are lower on the list of hazards. And this is the component that directly relates to what Jacob was talking about with the reimbursement process. If you're going to be fixing these holes and things that we find, when you're all done, we'd come back, verify that they're fixed, and then you can submit those for getting part of that cost share program, so you can get some of that cost recuperated. Yeah, I think that's it for that one. So let's go to the next one. The third and final component of our program is direct control. And this is basically our staff, the boots on the ground, wildlife damage management, where we are out there working with the producer, of course, but using both lethal and non-lethal control for wildlife. So again, that depends on what species are present and whether or not we can use lethal control or not. Like invasive species, we do use primarily lethal control. But non-lethal harassment, stuff like that, working with longer term strategies, recommending habitat management, stuff like that. And again, everything that we do, we record in our app. So we have all the numbers. We give monthly reports to the producer to show, what we've done. So you can see an example there. It's kind of hard to read the table, but how many birds were removed, how many were dispersed. And again, we can create these maps of, where we're finding the activity. And then again, over time, we should see these levels decrease. And then again, the producer will have a nice record of that, so, God forbid, maybe you do become positive, then you would have a nice record to show that, hey, we've been doing a lot of work, and we do recognize that, our goal is to reduce the risk, but we do recognize that, you can't completely eliminate risk. But in this case, you would have a nice example of what you've done. And then go to the next slide. And then finally, again, as I mentioned, this is a long-term relationship. So when we work with a producer, each site is site specific, what depends on how big it is, depends on how much wildlife there is, what habitats are present. We might visit, it could be a couple times a week, especially to begin with. And then as the wildlife populations go down and the hazards get fixed, we can maybe drop that down to, once a month. Every site's different, but it is a long-term relationship. And again, we're tracking all this data. We're working with the producer, communicating with them, giving them all those updates. And then after 6 months, we compile everything: the wildlife abundance surveys, the wildlife biosecurity assessments, the hazards, and then the direct control. Summarize everything in one nice report after about 6 months, and then if we continue, we'd give you an annual report from then on, and then you could start to see longer term trends, like the seasonality again during migration season, winter versus summer, stuff like that, and then over time again comparing your future reports from your initial reports, and you should see the progress that you've seen. So I think that's all I got. Yep. So
All right.
turn it back over to you, Eric.
Yes, thank you, David. And thank you to all of our presenters for your time and sharing your knowledge and insight with us today. Before we wrap up, a couple things I want to take a moment to highlight for our audience. First, for additional resources, you can visit our Defend the Flock website. There's the address there, www.aphis.gov/livestock-poultry-disease/avian/defend-the-flock. To make it easy, you can just search USDA Defend the Flock, and be sure to bookmark that page for future reference. Also, we want to encourage you to stay informed and stay connected with the latest updates from the Defend the Flock program by following our official social media accounts. We have Defend the Flock pages on Facebook and on X, and USDA's Animal Plant Health and Inspection Service on LinkedIn. And if you have any general questions for today, you can contact USDA Animal Plant Health Inspection Service toll free at 1-866-536-7593. But if you have specific questions about today's webinar, please email that address there, eric.gabriel@usda.gov. Again, we'll be collecting all of these questions and providing answers. We're going to post them, all of the Q&As along with today's webinar, on our Defend the Flock website soon. So I know some folks were in the chat with questions. Please just email them over. We're going to collect them and work to get all of them answered from our subject matter experts and the team back here at APHIS. So thank you again to our presenters, Dr. Nancy Hanaway, Jacob Smithson, David Marks, and to all of you, our webinar attendees. We appreciate your time and interest on today's event. And on behalf of everyone at USDA's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service, we thank you and take care.